"Sir, I can help your daughter walk again." In the serene expanse of Westward Light Park, a young boy, calm and dark-skinned, addressed a silent billionaire. Beside him sat his daughter, her small body still in a wheelchair. The boy's audacious words struck Jonathan Keller, the man, pulling him between the cold grip of logic and a sudden spark of impossible hope. He granted the boy an hour. What Jonathan couldn't know was that this seemingly ordinary child was about to conjure a miracle no medical expert ever could, a transformation that would redefine their lives, even the billionaire's own. Before we delve deeper, tell us where you're watching from. We cherish hearing your thoughts. It was a gentle spring afternoon in Seattle's quiet heart, Westward Light Park, where cherry blossoms drifted like soft pink snow. Children's laughter echoed as they darted between fountains, while a violinist's melody near the main fountain wove through the air. The inviting scents of roasted peanuts, warm pretzels and sugary churros enveloped the park in a vibrant embrace. But at the square's furthest edge, shielded from the joy and music, sat a man who hadn't felt warmth in years. Jonathan Keller, a tall figure in his late 40s, wore a tailored suit beneath a gray cashmere coat. His silver wristwatch glinted, yet his hands lay still. His phone rested untouched. His eyes, once commanding and certain, were now hollow, tired, lost. Beside him, in a sleek custom-made wheelchair, was his 9-year-old daughter, Emily Keller. Her hair, carefully braided, framed a pale forehead, adorned with a soft pink headband. She clutched a well-worn stuffed bunny, its ears frayed, one eye missing. Her gaze was fixed not on the vibrant park, but on a silent, distant void, as if her spirit remained trapped in the moment everything shattered. 3 years prior, a truck collision on the highway had claimed her mother instantly. Emily survived, but the spinal injury, every expert declared, was beyond repair. Since then, Jonathan had sought every avenue, leading neurologists in Europe, advanced rehabilitation centers in Japan, even clandestine clinics whispered about in powerful circles. Each time, after the endless scans, the hopeful initial assessments, the same devastating verdict: she will never walk again. Jonathan swallowed hard, his gaze lingering on her. "Time to go, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice devoid of urgency. He no longer expected movement or response. He had ceased expecting much of anything. Then a voice. Not loud, not demanding, but profoundly calm and direct, almost otherworldly. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." Jonathan turned abruptly. A boy, no older than 8, stood a few feet away. Barefoot, clad in an oversized, torn hoodie and dust-caked pants. His skin was sun-kissed, smudged with city grime, his hair a wild tangle around his forehead. But it was his eyes that held Jonathan captive, clear, unwavering. They held no fear, no doubt, only a deep, knowing stillness. The boy didn't introduce himself. He asked for nothing, offered no trinkets, made no plea for food. He simply stood, hands at his sides, observing Emily as if he saw something in her no one else had. Jonathan blinked, his voice sharper than intended. "Do you have any idea how many doctors have told me it's impossible? World-class surgeons, specialists from Zurich. Do you truly believe you, a child from the street, know more than them?" "I don't need to know more than them," the boy replied evenly. "I don't need degrees or titles. I just need your permission." Before Jonathan could retort, a small tug on his sleeve. He looked down. Emily had subtly turned her head, her voice barely a whisper, trembling but alive. "Dad, can we try?" Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something Jonathan hadn't witnessed in years. Not since before the accident. Hope. Pure, unfiltered, stubborn hope. Her small hand gripped his arm as if clinging to a final, precious spark. Jonathan hesitated. His mind screamed to refuse, to shield her from yet another crushing disappointment, from believing in what couldn't be. But his heart, long dormant, buried beneath layers of grief and cold diagnoses, began to thrum. He looked back at the boy. The child remained still, unflinching, unbegging. He simply waited. Finally, Jonathan exhaled a slow, ragged breath. 1 hour, he stated. That's all you get. 1 hour to try. And with that, a story long defined by loss began to quietly, unceremoniously, pivot towards what might yet be discovered. Jonathan's words had barely faded when the boy offered a simple nod, as if the answer was always assured. Without another sound, he turned and moved towards a quieter corner of the park, near a broad jacaranda tree where lavender blossoms had begun to form a soft carpet at its roots. Emily clutched her bunny tighter as Jonathan slowly pushed her wheelchair behind him, uncertain, wary, yet strangely compelled. They reached a shaded spot where the breeze softened and the city's hum became a distant whisper. There the boy knelt and began to work with focused intent. He arranged small twigs and smooth stones into precise circles, like a practiced ritual. From his worn backpack he produced a frayed square of cloth, yellowed with age, its edges clumsily but carefully stitched. He placed it on the ground with quiet reverence, smoothing its corners. Then he turned to Emily and held out a small black stone, polished smooth as if handled for generations. "Take this," he said softly, his voice devoid of mystery or drama, only calm certainty. "What is it?" Jonathan interjected, still standing, arms crossed, skepticism lacing his tone. The boy looked up at him, not defensively, just directly. "It's a reminder," he said. "She has to remember walking. Not with her legs, not yet. But in her mind. That's where it starts." Jonathan opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no arrogance in the boy, no sales pitch, no strange chant or gimmick. Just clear, still, unshaken intention. Emily reached out with hesitant fingers and took the stone, holding it in her lap as if it might vanish if she didn't focus. The boy, Leo, knelt before her. "Close your eyes," he said gently. "Can you feel the wind in your hair?" Emily blinked, unsure. "Just close them," he whispered. She obeyed. "Now," Leo continued, "imagine you're standing on grass. Not sitting, not rolling. Standing. Feel it under your toes. Can you feel the ground? Can you hear it crunch a little when you shift your weight?" Emily's brow furrowed, her lashes fluttered, her fingers curled around the stone. I think I feel something," she whispered. "It's small, like a ripple under the surface." Her words broke slightly, caught between wonder and disbelief. Her shoulders trembled, but her face remained serene. "It's like my legs remember. Like they're trying to speak." Jonathan's breath hitched. He took an instinctive step forward, only registering it when the gravel crunched under his shoes. He didn't speak, he didn't dare. His mind scrambled for logic, for explanations, for anything that could anchor what he was witnessing. But there were no theories here, no charts, no scans. Just his daughter, her eyes still shut, her lips moving slowly as she whispered, "I see myself running. I'm barefoot on the beach. I can feel the sun on my back." Leo remained still as stone, watching her, not with urgency but with infinite patience. Jonathan could barely breathe. It wasn't about walking, not yet. It was something profound, a shift beginning within Emily that no doctor had touched, no machine had measured. She opened her eyes. They glistened, wide and stunned, not with tears of grief, but with something akin to awe. She stared down at her legs, seeing them not merely as limbs, but as old friends stirring awake. The stone rested cradled in her palm, an anchor in a storm. "I want to do it again," she whispered. Leo nodded once, his expression unchanged. "Tomorrow," he said. "That's enough for today." Emily leaned back slowly, exhausted but smiling. A genuine smile, the first in years. Jonathan knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. He looked at the boy, attempting to speak, but words failed him. All he could do was nod in return, acknowledging something he didn't yet grasp. That night, sleep eluded him. Something within him had fractured open, not pain, not fear, but a question. And questions, when potent enough, possess a way of drawing truth into the light. What Jonathan would unearth next, buried under a name he had tried to erase, would change everything. That question shadowed Jonathan home. It lingered through the dinner he barely touched, permeated conversations he didn't hear, and enveloped him in bed as he stared at the ceiling long after midnight. He told himself it was a fluke, a coincidence, perhaps even a placebo effect. But the image of her fingers clutching that stone, whispering, "I think I felt something," refused to fade. By 3 a.m. Jonathan sat in his dimly lit study, surrounded by old files. He picked up his phone, dialing a private contact line used for months. "I need a background check," he stated simply. "A child 8 years old. First name Leo, possibly Leonardo. Martinez or Santiago. No last name confirmed." By morning the call came back and Jonathan's breath hitched. The boy's true name was Leonardo Martinez, born in Tacoma. Parents, both deceased. The report detailed a fatal car accident 3 years prior. A truck versus a family sedan, drunk driving confirmed. 2 adults killed instantly. 1 survivor, an unnamed child age 5. The accident had been quietly settled through an internal fund under Keller Freight Holdings, Jonathan's own logistics company. The driver had been an employee terminated, yes, but the liability had been discreetly resolved through backdoor negotiations and silenced money. Jonathan vaguely recalled the case now. At the time he'd been consumed by a tech acquisition. His legal team had handled it. No trial, no press, no survivors listed. At least that's what he'd been told. But the child had lived. And that child had found his way back, not with anger, not with demands, but with a quiet purpose and eyes that saw straight through him. Jonathan stared at the report, his hands trembling. Guilt clawed its way from the pit of his stomach, not just for the tragedy, but because he hadn't asked. He had never once inquired about those left behind. A single sign page had closed the chapter for him, but for Leo that chapter hadn't ended. It had just begun. Driven by a name mentioned in the file, Jonathan pursued a new lead that afternoon. He arrived on the edge of the old Kensington district, where brick buildings slumped under decades of neglect. Tucked between a boarded-up bakery and a graffiti-covered wall, a small sign hung from rusted chains. Dr. Harold Amos. Free rehab. No promises, only gratitude. The door creaked open as Jonathan knocked, and an elderly man with silver hair and a limp stepped into the hallway. His gaze was sharp, tired, yet not unkind. "You're Jonathan Keller," the man said without surprise. "Leo said you'd come." They sat in the back room amidst resistance bands, worn-out mats and hand-drawn charts tacked to the walls. Jonathan listened as Dr. Amos recounted the story, not with drama but with stark honesty. After the accident, Leo had been abandoned by extended family, passed through shelters and eventually found his way here. He had refused surgery, refused medication. All he had accepted was time, guidance and the belief. "That boy taught himself how to move again," Amos said. "He couldn't walk, but he never said he couldn't heal. I gave him space, he did the rest." Then Dr. Amos handed Jonathan a notebook. The pages were weathered and stained, filled with sketches, body diagrams, scribbled observations in a child's handwriting. It chronicled every stretch, every ache, every fall and every rise. The drawings were crude, yet brimming with focus, like a scientist trying to solve a mystery with only his own body as evidence. Jonathan held the book as if it were spun from glass. He couldn't look away. Driving home he left the radio off, ignored calls. He kept seeing that boy, kneeling beside his daughter, asking for nothing, offering everything. When he pulled into his estate's driveway he made a decision. Leo would not sleep outside again. He called his housekeeper, Janet, and instructed her to prepare a room. "For whom?" she asked, clearly taken aback. "For the boy," he said. "He stays here now. He's not trained. He's not safe," Janet objected. But Jonathan cut her off. "He stays," he repeated, leaving no room for argument. That night, as Leo stepped barefoot into the grand house, still dusty, still quiet, Emily illuminated as if someone had opened a window and invited the sun in. Her smile wasn't polite or forced. It was real, wide, and alive. It articulated everything Jonathan couldn't. And so, in a greenhouse repurposed into a makeshift therapy space, with rope pulleys, cloth weights, and child-sized braces fashioned from padded metal, Leo and Emily began something new. It wasn't official, wasn't approved, but it was working. Every movement, no matter how minute, was a triumph. But even in moments of hope, storms can gather quietly. And one was already approaching. The days that followed settled into a strange, beautiful rhythm. Every morning, Emily awoke earlier than usual, eyes bright with anticipation, holding the black stone like a talisman. In the greenhouse, sunlight filtered through pollen-dusted panes, casting golden patterns on the floor where she and Leo worked, sometimes for hours. They played games that defied the typical image of therapy. Catching soft, weighted balls, balancing on cushions, imagining they were walking on clouds or swimming through invisible sand. Each exercise was disguised in laughter, in stories, in challenges only a child would conceive. Yet behind each game lay purpose, focus, repetition. Her legs trembled, her hands ached, her forehead glistened with sweat, but she smiled through it all. Jonathan observed from the doorway most days, arms crossed, still cautious but quietly astonished. He witnessed Leo's unwavering approach, never forcing, never raising his voice, never asserting control. He simply encouraged, guided, believed. And Emily responded not as a patient but as a partner. Each day she pushed a little further. Her balance improved, her voice grew stronger, her laughter came quicker. Hope had returned to the house not as a grand event, but as a quiet presence that permeated the halls, filled the air and made even the quiet dinners feel warmer. But then one morning the rhythm fractured. Heavy rain had fallen through the night, and the house awoke to a damp, cold mist clinging to the windows. Emily didn't appear for breakfast. Janet found her on the edge of her bed, pale, hunched forward, clutching her lower back. Her voice was strained, lips tight with pain. "It hurts," she whispered. "It's sharp like a knife when I move." Leo rushed in the moment he heard. He dropped to his knees beside her, examining her posture, pressing gently along her spine with the calm of someone who had known that exact pain. But before he could finish, Janet stormed into the room declaring, "Enough. I've let this go on too long." Without waiting for permission, she seized the phone and dialed Dr. Thomas Greaves, the family's longtime physician. Within the hour, Dr. Greaves arrived, tall, formal, and visibly displeased. He entered the greenhouse like a soldier inspecting a battlefield, scoffing at the homemade equipment, eyeing Leo like a liability. After a brief examination of Emily, he stood, adjusted his glasses, and turned to Jonathan with practiced authority. "This ends now," he stated. "She's inflamed, possibly worse. Her spinal tissue could be irritated. This boy's methods are not only untested, they're dangerous. Continuing this could cause permanent regression." Jonathan's hands tightened into fists at his sides. He looked at Leo standing silent near the wall, head lowered but not ashamed. Then he looked at Emily, pale, sweating, trembling, but her eyes were not afraid. They burned with something fierce. She reached for her father's hand, her grip weak but urgent. "Please," she gasped, "don't send him away. I know what this feels like. I know the pain is part of it. It's not hurting me, it's helping me. Dad, please don't stop this now." Her words shook Jonathan to his core. Every instinct screamed to follow the doctor, to protect her, to retreat into safety. But something deeper, older, held him still. He looked at her not as a fragile daughter, but as a fighter who had earned the right to speak for herself. Then he turned to Dr. Greaves and spoke firmly, leaving no room for negotiation. "2 more weeks," he said. "That's the deal. 2 weeks. If there's no progress, we end it. But not before." Dr. Greaves, stunned, gave a curt nod and left without another word. Janet stood frozen, lips pressed into a line of disapproval, but Jonathan didn't care. Emily slumped back into her pillows, exhausted but smiling. Leo walked forward and gently placed the stone back into her hand. And so the truce began. Dr. Greaves didn't disappear entirely. He returned each day not to lead but to monitor, observe, and eventually to contribute. He began to integrate his clinical methods with Leo's visualization techniques. Physical resistance paired with memory recall, standard stretches laced with narrative imagination. Together, the doctor and the barefoot boy, polar opposites in every way, began to speak the same language. Emily endured moments of frustration, of doubt, of exhaustion so profound she sometimes wept. But she never quit. Leo's voice, calm and steady, always drew her back. "You're not broken," he'd whisper. "You're becoming." The exercises grew harder, the sessions longer, but so did her will. She gritted her teeth through every tremor, every cramp, every breathless pause, because now she possessed something she hadn't had before: ownership of her own story. And though no one could say when it would happen, all of them felt it building, like a silent wave just off the shore waiting to rise. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.